This is an early morning shot that I took a few years ago where the water was perfectly smooth like glass, and a lone fishing boat went by, just a single engine, little putt-putt, went by and just quietly in on the far shore, and then it started off these beautiful symmetrical ripples, which you don't often get because these are all lined up nicely, and whereas once you have another watercraft go by, it interrupts them and you get all sorts of interference patterns happening. So this is, I've cleaned the palette, but I'm still using the same piece of paper, and you don't have to worry about all the colors you see in there. It will not transfer. This is definitely borders on being cheap, but it's also environmentally friendly not to use more materials than we need to. I'm going with that. I'm very environmentally friendly. So today's picture is a early morning shot of Glass Smooth Lake that was interrupted by an early, I'm guessing, fisherman that just passed by once. And so these ripples constantly changed as they moved towards me, and this is what I consider to be about the best point in that. So we're going to be mixing up a purple, that's probably a lot more red, and this time I'm using a purple, but I'm going to be making a fairly red purple and a very desaturated purple. So we want the warm red, and I think we'll put down, we need some yellow to desaturate it even more, and I think I'll use the yellow ochre or yellow oxide, depending on what your paint company chooses to call that. I'm doing the same, keeping the red and the yellow and the blue fairly separated. Just because I will be mixing up a very desaturated orange. A little less important because we're not making a very saturated purples, so we're not going to have a huge problem with that. We're going to put the horizon, or not the horizon line, but the water line, which is not that different in this long view, but it is slightly lower. So we're just going to, I'm going to start with this landmass. I think I'm going to actually cut that a bit short. I don't want this gap to be right in the center. And so I think that should work. So we're going to start mixing a purple. You need to get the white in there very early so you can see what the heck you're doing. This is a very light color that we're looking at. So the yellow in the warm red automatically produces a very desaturated purple, which is what we want. But I think this is a little bit too dark. I'm using liquids just because they're really easy to replenish in this particular case. So we've got the line, but we're going to make sure that we go below those lines. We want to make sure we have enough of this paint, enough of the sky done, so that we don't have to worry about exactly where we're choosing to put the landmass. And we want to take this up high enough that we're not going to, so now we're just going to come in with some straight white and blend that into there. Now we're going to clean that brush, and we're going to mix up a very desaturated orange. And right now the white is doing most of the desaturation, but we'll just come in. I could use some of that purple to desaturate it, but in this case we want to keep that fairly clean for doing the water. So that, we put that down, that is way too light, or rather way too dark. I was being a little bold putting that in there. So we want to make sure you put down enough paint so that we're not starving that. And then we're just going to get a Aquamaster brush. It's 1 inch wide. And we're just going to back and forth slowly, or rather quickly, and just vertically very slowly. We just want to blend that into a nice smooth. So we're going to mix up some more of that purple. This time we're going to make it a little bit darker because it's in the water, and quite often reflections are darker. Not always, but and this we are making, so we're just getting it a little bit into the bluer side. You can see this Stay Wet palette is fairly wet, as those color, or the blue especially, is blooming out. So we're just going to put that, I think it needs to be bluer. And as we add the blue in there, we're going to have to add some white just to bring back the value. So I think that looks about right. So we're going to bring that down quite a bit lower. Again, making sure you're putting enough paint down. Don't be too skimpy. I'm really not the one to be talking. So I've used the brush I was using on the purple to mix that more orange-red color. So I think we'll just grab a little bit more of that. So it's like an intern mix. And now we're going to get a little more orange. You will get it a little bit redder. Red, you have to watch the red. The red is a very strong tinting color. That's probably too dark. Because we always have to keep in mind what that color is going to do. So now I'm going to come back in and just put a little of the purple in there, just to, I'm not sure how smooth we're going to want this. We may want to create some subtle ripples through there, but so I'm getting out another dry brush, and we're just going to smooth that out. So we're going to put in the landmass. So we're going to make this green, but really just barely green. And we're just going to, and that looks a little too green. We're going to push that more into the blue side, especially for this back one. And that looks a little bit dark because we know it's going to dry darker. So we'll just try putting that in there. And because this is right at the back and it's a more distant tree line, we're not going to put these trees too pronounced. So I think we're going to just add a little bit of blue just down the bottom of that. And just suggest some very subtle trees in there. Okay, so we're coming forward a bit, so we're going to green that up a bit. At no point are we going to get into a full green, and we're always going to try and keep them a little bit into the blue side. Or rather, on the blue side and in the gray tones. I do like liquid paints for the ease of adding more to the palette. You can basically do it one-handed. So we're going to be getting a little bit darker on this other side. This is another brush that is going in the garbage. It's a small brush, but it really isn't holding a nice point anymore. And like I said before, I am definitely a brush abuser. So for one reason or another, I've been very sloppy with this one. So I'm just going to redo the bottom where I've marked it up. And we'll glaze it into the purple. I think that looks pretty good, so we're just going to put that down, and we're going to keep the paint pretty thick right where we buggered it up. And it's always good to know how to fix something like this. This was a wet and wet blend that we're now going to glaze into. It's a little bit easier if the color is the same or close enough. So now we're cleaning the brush and we're just going to go along that edge and blend that in. So I cleaned the brush again, obviously not very well. So I cleaned that brush again, and I'm just going to work that edge. And so we'll clean it again. And gradually work down. Very light touch. So I've changed the camera angle because to do this, it's a little bit difficult to be reaching out in front. I don't normally paint flat. I normally paint on an easel, which is comparatively much easier than working and reaching to see that. So we are just mixing up a dark to do the far shore and the start of the reflections. So we're using the KX9100 rather. So we're just going to put a dark line right near. I switched to a longer KX9100 because I kept drifting off the end of the shorter one. So I'm pushing down on the rigger to get a thicker line. That was good. Sorry, but I had to change the angle. It was just a little too hard to work with the camera center and me off center. Hopefully this is going to look okay for you on the video. So these little bits in between are where the taller trees are, and more solid on the end, mostly due to this gap in the middle where we don't have as much of the dark coming down. We'll just add a little tidbit on the end there. To get the really thin lines, you really don't want very much paint on that brush. So we're just going to push a little bit more of the darks into the top here. See, I think I'll just lighten those darks a little bit that side. It's not much farther back, but we're just tweaking some of these trees a little bit.